Okay, fine. I think we can probably get started. Our speakers have joined for the day. Um, I would request everybody to keep your videos on so that we also feel like we're talking to people and not just some computer bots. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome you all for the webinar today on the role of shadow teachers. And considering that most of our children have not gone to school for the last 2 years, it does become important for us to address how we're going to help them settle down in school and transitioning from online to offline. So for the same, we've gathered together here with a panel of speakers who have had experience working in this kind of a setting. I'd like to start by introducing our speakers for today. We have with us Dr. Bindya Shajid, who is a highly revered child psychologist who's known for her child rights based therapeutic approach and her work in inclusion. She has worked with around 15 years of experience with children with disabilities, and she's done her PhD in school psychology from North Carolina University in the USA. She also holds a master's degree in special education from NC State, USA, and she's also trained in the evaluation and treatment of learning disabilities, ADHD, autism, and anxiety in children and adolescents. She has also been part of the founding team member of several centers and inclusion in schools at Bangalore. And she's also developed her own model of support teaching in using principles of teach. And she's also trained in supervising shadow teachers and therapists for the last few years. She also uses a cognitive behavioral approach of treatment and has been trained in certain principles of ABA. She is currently the only certified professional in India in collaborative and proactive solutions, which is an evidence-based approach towards working with children and adolescents with behavior difficulties. She was the ex-member of the Karnataka Child Welfare Committee and is also the presently the director of All Inclusive Foundation and the head of programs at Insighte. Dr. Bindya, thank you for joining us today. We also have with us Ms. Nikita Nath and Ms. Roshali Chengappa, who are also the shadow teachers who worked with different schools at Insight. Ms. Nikita holds a master's in psychology with a clinical specialization. She is currently working with Insight as an assistant child psychologist, school support teacher, and a behavioral therapist. She also works with Worksera as a consultant teacher in psychology, and she has experience working with neurodiverse children from the ages of 6 to 9. She is trained in TEACH and in AAC. Nikita believes in working with a client-centered approach and focuses on evidence-based practice in her sessions. She loves reading books, and when she's not busy working with kids, she also likes to drink coffee. Rushali holds a master's in counseling psychology from Bangalore University. As part of her training experience, she has supported several kids at Tata Swastha, which is a center for special education and rehabilitation, where she has worked in collaboration with other therapists on the early intervention programs to help develop motor skills in children aged between the years of 8 to 15. She's also worked with children diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and helped them with their academics and learning. During her brief time with ASHA, which is Academy for Severe Handicaps and Autism, she's also assisted students between the ages of 3 to 7 along with their parents and involved them in activities during the day. Roshali believes in having an empathetic relationship with her clients, and she believes in working with children needs patient listening and understanding. She also believes that each child has their own rights and strengths, which can be used to help them make a difference. And last but not the least, we have Ms. Srishti Shah, who holds a master's in clinical psychology from Christ University, Bangalore, and a master's from the University of Northampton, UK, in inclusive education and special education needs. She currently works as a special educator at the Indus International School Primary Years Program, Bangalore. Before joining an IB school, she has taught children with special needs in inclusive mainstream ICSE schools. She's also worked as a student counselor and visited early learning centers to accommodate students with varied learning needs. She's also worked in mainstream schools such as Greenwood High, the Viha School, the Green Acres Academy in Mumbai. She also believes that the purpose of education is to upskill, reskill, and reinvent yourself. She has previously also worked with primary, middle, and high school programs as a school counselor, a high school emotional counselor, special educator, a resource room teacher, and so on. She believes, just like most of us here at Insight do, that if a child cannot learn the way we teach, we should teach the way that the child can learn. And her experiences have helped her understand the importance of the 21st century skills that students need, and why we need to focus more on how to learn rather than what to learn. I take this opportunity to welcome all our speakers for the day. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope we have a good discussion in terms of understanding the role of the shadow teacher and how we can facilitate the process of inclusion using the same. So to begin with, I would like for Dr. Bindya, if you could probably just share a little bit about the role of a shadow teacher and what we do at Insight, and what the shadow teachers are trained to do. Post which we could probably ask some of the questions that we have received from the audience, and we can address it to the speakers. After which we can take any other questions that the panel members would want to ask, or the audience would want to ask the panelists. Over to you, Dr. Vindya.
Thank you, Meghna, and thanks for having me here today. So at Insight, we one of the things that we believe in is that we need to work with the child in their natural environments. And when we say natural environment, it is either school or at home. And we also believe in working in those respective environments, right? So if we want help at home, and if the family is looking for specific help with activities at home or with challenges at home, we consider supporting the family with a home therapist. On the other hand, if the challenges are at school, we consider supporting the family with a shadow teacher. Now, in my practice, I get a lot of referrals where families come to me requesting for help with difficulties or challenges that the child is having at school. So the school may not be open to having a support teacher there, but the child is showing difficulties in adjusting to the expectations of the school, and the school is having difficulty managing the child within their premises. So they put the onus on the families to find a solution for it. So the families approach me and ask me for interventions, behavioral interventions that can be done with the child so that the child's behaviors at school would change. So what I try to help families understand is that if the challenges that the family is having is at home, it would be easy for me to help out. But if the challenges that the child is having is at school, there's nothing that the family can do, nor can I, because I'm not in the school. And it is so important to understand that concept, as in to understand why is it important to provide the appropriate interventions in the respective environments. When difficulties happen at school, I believe that the triggers for those difficulties are also at the school. And when a child is showing difficulties at school, the same challenges or same difficulties may not be noticed at home, because the similar triggers are not there at home. The child may have a different set of difficulties at home, but not what is happening at school. So for that reason, in order to identify those triggers, to work with those triggers, to help the child, we need to be in that particular environment. So I've had examples where I have gone and sat in the classroom and observed the child and found that the child behaves a certain way in a certain classroom only because a teacher is a certain way, or the subject is a certain way, or the classmates behave a certain way in that class. That is the reason why the child's behaviors are so. So a child's behavior is not independent of his environment. It is always dependent on whatever is happening around him. So for that reason, we need to have interventions that are designed for that particular environment and delivered in that particular environment. And that is how we came to the solution of having shadow teachers in those shadow teachers to support children in the school environment, because if there are these triggers, the shadow teachers can either work on preventing those triggers, or work with the child on how to overcome those triggers, or to meet those expectations in a more appropriate way. So when we talk about a shadow teacher can play a lot of different roles. They can definitely support educational expectations if that is what the child is struggling with. They can support the child with the behavioral expectations, following rules, uh, um, complying with instructions of the teachers, pulling out the book at the right time, taking notes down at the right time, or finishing up and packing up at the right time. I mean, these kinds of behavioral expectations of a classroom, a shadow teacher can support with. Shadow teacher can also support with social skills difficulties that the child may be having. A lot of our shadow teachers work with the child on initiating social interactions with their classmates, or support the classmates in initiating appropriate interactions with the child. So a shadow teacher can play a lot of different roles. They're basically a liaison between the expectations of the school and the needs of the child. So traditionally, as I said, our shadow teachers have been supporting children in schools, and depending on the needs of the child, if it's academic or if it's social or if it's behavioral, the shadow teacher has been providing the respective interventions. We also evaluate to see if the child is ready for certain skills. If we find that the child is not ready for certain skills, we don't encourage the shadow teachers or the families to push for a certain skill at a certain age or at a certain stage in the child's development. So we support the shadow teachers to identify what is right and what is reasonable expectation for a child in a given environment, and try and help the child be in the regular classroom environment and be a part of it to the maximum extent possible. So those are some of the things that our shadow teachers are supporting most of our clients with. We also see that one of the things that we need to understand also is that children also need to understand the difference between home and school environments. Now, as I said, these two environments are extremely different. So home is a place where you're comfortable, you can break rules, it's fine. You're always excused if you have broken a rule. It's an environment of comfort, but a school is a more structured environment. So when a child transitions from, say, around 3 or 4 years of age, when a child is ready to transition into a school environment, we would like to teach the child to understand that a school environment is going to be different from a home environment. So traditionally, the reason why we had kindergarten is for that, is to teach the child how to do schooling, is for them to understand that this environment is going to be different from home. You will have to follow rules because there'll be so many other little people around you, and you will all have similar expectations, and you have to cope with those expectations. So kindergarten was always about that. There was no education, there was no academics, there was no emphasis on developing academic skills at that point. We are only helping the child understand the difference between home and school. And when you get to grade 1 is when you actually start with reading and other academic processes that are involved. But we know for a fact now that that is not how it works these days, because right around 2 or 3 years of age, we're already putting academic pressure on children. So given this context, we need to understand what we have been going through the past 2 years during the pandemic. We've realized that we've completely confused our children, right? We've brought together two different contexts, and we've kind of mixed it, and we've made a big mess out of it and given it to the children. So children are supposed to access structured education from the comforts of their home, which is a huge mismatch because you're expected to do schooling while you're at home, and there's a lot of contradictions in the expectations that's put on you. So when neurotypical children are struggling with these expectations and these conflicting messages that they're getting from both settings, imagine how our neurodivergent children must be struggling. So today, I think most of our speakers are also going to be talking about this transition, right? So for a child who has already been to school before and this 2 years were a break, we may not see as much of a difficulty because the child may be reminded of the structure that they're used to in that environment as soon as they are introduced to that environment. But what about the children who have done 2 years of schooling from home? And now how do you um, get them reintegrated into the regular school business, right? So these are some of the discussions that we can have today. I'll give it over to Meghna to take it forward. That's right.
Sorry, ma'am, I have one question. Bharat here from Pune. Again, sorry to interrupt the discussion because this is my own question out of curiosity. Because when we are putting my son into school, right, with shadow teacher. So first of all, we could not get a school which is inclusive. Finally, we got a school which is inclusive. But many people or many counselor told don't put them into an inclusive school because when you put them into shadow teacher, what will happen is they might develop an inferiority complex that I need help. Somebody has to help me always. So is that true, or I mean that's just a concern in my mind? Like we are putting a shadow teacher with the son for with the kids, right, for just to help them or overcome their challenges. But do you think that, in your opinion or in your experience, that will that impact on their self-esteem that I need help from someone in my day-to-day activities? So yeah, just if you can shed some light on that, that would be great.
Sure, Bharat. Thanks for that
Is it
question.
okay
Is
if
it okay? Yeah, go ahead, Meghna.
sorry. Is it okay, Mr. Bharat, if we can take the questions towards the end? I was hoping
Yeah,
we could
sure, sure,
hear
Meghna.
from
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
speakers
no
and
worries,
then
no worries.
maybe.
No
All
worries.
right.
Thank you, Meghna. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I think I would like for the shadow teachers to probably get started in terms of telling us what isn't in their experience was the biggest challenge that they faced when they shifted from online to offline. And also, if you could tell us a little bit about the kind of work you do with children in school so that others also understand what is expected of a shadow teacher. So maybe we could have Ms. Nikita go first and then maybe Mr. Shali, if you could just add to the same.
My biggest challenge while going from offline to online online to offline was not the first time that I went with my client. The first time that my client started school, like offline school, was in December, so that time it was actually better. My biggest challenge was when third wave came and I had to go switch back to online and then come back to offline. That was my biggest challenge, because the first time that he started going to school, it was a new experience for him, and he was very excited. He got a lot adjusted with his friends and everybody, and he was very settled. That was like 10 days of school that we went to in from December to January, and there was no problems at all. And then there was third wave and we had to do entire of February online, and March we shifted back to offline, is when the biggest challenges started to show. There were new behaviors that was seeing, which were completely not there in in his home setting. So even though I was working with him as a shadow during the online sessions as well at his house, the challenges that time and the ones which I was facing in the school was completely different. So it felt like it's a completely different client that I'm working with. It's sometimes it felt like that. So there were behaviors which I had never experienced at home. So it was a complete different set of challenges to deal with those behaviors. And I started seeing new behaviors almost every second third day, which even the parents had never seen, and they couldn't believe it that their child was displaying such behaviors. Like there was pushing other children, there was pulling hair, and biting once or twice. So these were all behaviors which I was experiencing like every 2 3 days. These behaviors would add on, and that's when I was finding it most difficult from March to April time being. So that was the challenge, to shift him back from offline to from online to offline, because he had gotten used to a certain kind of routine, and there was a major routine disruption because of this shift, and he was finding it very difficult. And like my client's diagnosis is autism. So autistic kids, they have a very routine based, they are very routine based, so it was very challenging for him to shift back to the routine, and for me also to put him into the routine. So that was my biggest challenge.
Thank you, Ms. Nikita. Mr. Shali?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I started with my clients, so it was offline and online. So there was a complete shift happening. 1 month online, 1 month offline. So he had to go back and forth to online, offline, online, offline. But then since February, there is a flow which is going offline. So as Nikita mentioned, it's again there is a complete difference in the behavior that we see in an online setting, and again when they come to offline setting. Offline setting, they come, they explore a lot of things. They have their peers around, they have their teachers around, and they have a complete environment change. They're coming out of a comfortable environment again to an offline setting. So my biggest challenge was that so my client has a diagnosis of ADHD. So he had the first of all, to sit in one place, it was very difficult for him because at home it's like, okay, if I don't want to sit, I can just walk around and like I can just go away from whatever I was doing. So but in school, as Miss Dr. Bindia also mentioned, that there is a structure that needs to be followed, and sitting in class, or there are so many periods where you need to sit through. uh, so even he had that like, okay, I'm sitting for so long. So when he couldn't express that he doesn't want to sit through, he used to show behaviors like, um, like screaming, or throwing something that indicates that he doesn't want to do something at that particular moment and wants something else to be done. So taking him out for a walk, or making him play and getting back to the task that he was doing, or getting back uh, him to the class would make it much more easier. And every day used to be a challenge in an offline setting, because there were different things um, happening around, and there was a lot of social interaction after a long time that was happening to the child as well. Because there was pandemic for 2 years, and then the child came back to offline setting, and the client met the peers, and there was interactions and everything. So there was a lot of things going on. So yeah, my biggest challenge was that I had to settle him down in an offline setting, and get make him used to the routine and the structure uh, that he had to follow.
All right. So, given that both of you are psychologists, how does your occupation as being a psychologist help you in working as a shadow? Do you think that it is any different from how other shadows are? Because we do know of several other schools where shadow teachers are sometimes parents, or they are sometimes people who do not have any experience working with children. They could be caretakers or people from the non-psychology background. So how does your qualification of being a psychologist, or rather, how has it helped you so far in working with children? Miss Rushali and then Miss Nikita.
Yeah. So as I have done experience in this field, and I have interned and I've worked with kids before. So I have seen different scenarios, and like I have worked with parents and children in a setting as well. So having studied about psychology, and getting experience in this particular field, uh, it's it's like we know certain times that like our whatever we have studied also is we are bringing it into practice, like when we have to help this child with academics or behaviors or anything. So we know how we can help the child, or what sort of strategies, or what sort of techniques will help the child feel better, or help in the difficulty that the child is facing.
Miss Nikita, would you like to add?
I think like even if they are from other fields, I'm sure that they would try to be empathetic to the child and adjust to the child's needs. But I think coming from a psychology background, we at least for me, like the non-judgmental part of it naturally comes. I'm not as bothered by his behaviors as compared to others in the same setting. There are other teachers around, and they are a lot bothered than me, than to the child's behaviors. So maybe that is also my rapport with the child. Maybe that also affects this thing. But I think like coming from a psychology background, that non-judgmental part of it comes very naturally, and so that helps us provide a space, safe space to the child. And we can put the child's needs first rather than looking at what the school wants or the parents wants. I think that helps us coming from a psychology background, and we can take care of other things also. Like certain things come naturally, like when the child is having certain sensory issues, so what should we do to meet those needs? So those all things I think we can deal with because we have the training coming from the psychology background.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Nikita, for responding to that. So coming to you, Ms. Srishti, I think since you have also done your specialization in psychology and then further went on to do special education, if you could shed some light on how do special educators usually accommodate neurodiverse children in the classroom, or rather, what can a parent expect when they walk into a school, and what would a typical special educator would do with their kid?
Thank you, Meghna. So that's a long question. I think I think my panelists have already covered almost half the points. That yeah, you have to be very patient with the child. You need to understand the needs of the child. You need to trial it out, see what works, what doesn't work. Yes, there will be challenges because the past 2 years have been an upheaval battle. Going online, offline. There've been a lot of changes, but kids are resilient. That's one thing that is something that as shadow teachers, psychologists, special educators, we all agree. They just need a little push, and they will be able to bounce back. They will be able to flourish really well. And I think collaboration is one primary key for all stakeholders out here. I think even at Indus, we are nothing without our shadow teachers. Teachers are dependent on shadows. Teachers are dependent on special educators, so on counselors. So proper, consistent collaboration works along way. So yeah. Also, Miss, can I request you to make me the host so I can just present my slides as well?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah. Chitra, can you just support? I think it must be done now.
Can I share?
Check. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do let me know when you're able to see my screen.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay.
Thank you.
So basically, I mean, everyone spoke about what were the challenges, right? What I'm going to talk about are pretty much the same. How do we prep our children for physical classrooms after the online classroom? What has worked for us at Indus? What hasn't worked? What are the challenges that we faced in general? So starting from challenges, just to like a basic challenge, we did see that students reading issues, writing issues, spelling, learning gaps have increased tremendously. We see behavior, restlessness, fidgetiness. We see there is a lot of separation anxiety from parents in terms of transitioning back to physical campus. Earlier, they had opportunity to, after every class, go and lie down on the bed. Now they don't. So, they miss after every 2 hours, we feel that the kids are getting drained out. They need constant hydration, they need constant support, they need one-on-one guidance. So these are some various challenges which we as school felt was definitely there in terms of communication needs, in terms of their restlessness, because sitting tolerance has gone down tremendously. In classes, sitting for 45 minutes, one period is generally that long, it is a major challenge for our kids. So how can we support at that time? How can we help them transition to school while we give, take care of their individual learning needs. So these are some of the challenges that we face, and our shadows have really helped us from Insight in terms of accommodating us with the students. Again, punctuality. So we've also noticed something like after we transition back to the physical campus, kids have been irregular in their attendance. They've been coming, say 3 days a week, 4 days a week, even children with needs, missing every Fridays. Friday is a long weekend. So these are some of the challenges that we did face. Discipline, behavior issues have gone up tremendously. They're unable to express themselves, emotional difficulties, social skills have gone down, communication has gone down. So these are primary challenges that we face in ground, and we really needed support from parents, from shadow teachers, from counselors in terms of how to make inclusion a reality. So this was one area where we really struggled in. How did we generally tackle these challenges? Some of the strategies which I've mentioned here are hybrid model. So we did not transition directly to a physical model. We did come in a staggered manner. We did, juggle around with online classes once a week and 4 days offline, or perhaps one session where we had a few batch of students who were online and offline. So that really helped because they slowly transitioned. It took them time to adjust to the new model. Social emotional support. They needed us to be there for their social emotional skills, guiding parents, counseling parents in terms of transitioning. Even fear of the pandemic. A lot of times we didn't talk about how relevant it was. Like what if my child falls ill? How to maintain social distancing, especially in schools like ours, where we have huge, like the number of students in a class and the campus is, it was very difficult to accommodate every child, especially when it comes to children with SEN, how to accommodate their needs. Maintaining social distances and sanitizing. Again, shadow teachers were tremendously helpful and effective in terms of making sure that actually happened. Restoring routines. So a lot of our kids have, like Ms. Vidya had mentioned, they lost their routine. They when they were in the home environment, it was very comfortable environment. They used to sleep and eat at any random order. Now coming back to physical school requires them to again be ready on time, to be to be able to reach school on time. So that was a challenge. So we did come across a lot of our parents reaching out to us saying, can my student enter school safe, perhaps at a later time period, though it was not encouraged. So we had to really accommodate our children. Some of them needed half day. So we had to allow some of our SEN students to leave half day because for them to stay whole day in physical campus was extremely challenging. So these were some of the ways in which we tried to support them. Small group interactions, pairing them with a peer buddy, or having a lot of center-based, game-based learning really helped us. Also, IB follows something called visible thinking routines, where we used a lot of manipulatives in our learnings. We used a lot of thinking out tools to encourage children to explore the natural environment. When we had these activities in our regular homeroom classes, it really helped children in terms of developing social skills, communication skills, engaging with one another. They were not limited to them to their own ways of doing things. They had to collaborate. They had to connect with one another. So I'll just show you a few examples of some of the tools that we use. So this is one example where a student was asked to perhaps describe fractions through the pictorial manner. He had to draw pie charts. He had to represent it in fraction bars. This was one where they had to describe it and analyze its characteristics. So when we had students be paired in groups, it really helped them explore their inquiry topics, whether they're exploring the natural environment, whether it is something technical. These strategies really helped us in terms of arousing the interest towards academics. I'm sure you must have heard about 3-2-1 strategies, where the kids are talking about what is it that is going well, what are the new things that they would want to explore, or what are the questions that they have. A lot of times we focus, we tell them think. We don't tell them how to think. So these visible thinking routines help us specifically in terms of encouraging children with special needs to explore how to think. Like, what is it that I want to know in my learning process? What is it that I already know about any topic for that matter? So these tools really helped us in terms of arousing their interest towards academic or any learning goal for that matter. Again, coming to challenges with respect to SEN, we realized a lot of inattention was there, restlessness, communication, sensorial needs had gone up like anything. So we have students among us who have severe anxiety, who are unable to sit for long, cutting, pasting, playing on the sand. All of these activities have really helped them in terms of settling down in the school environment. Sometimes they get overstimulated. We also have students who are overstimulated by the activities around them or the new environment or the students, the classroom in general around them. So how do you widen these kind of learning gaps? How do you limit their distractions? We had to do a lot of pull-outs. We had to do a lot of one-on-one sessions where we cater to each and every child's individual learning needs. These were some of the challenges in online class because there was a time where we were in the hybrid model, some online, some offline. So again, some challenges where they wouldn't turn on their audio videos, they wouldn't attend sessions on time. Was a parent doing the work for them? We don't know. So how to accommodate, how to make sure that this is the child's actual authentic work, right? And in terms of kids with needs as well, what works with them, be it online or offline. This is one tool that we really felt was, as a team, it really, really works. Less is more. A lot of time our own personal aspiration, our own personal goals sometimes overwhelms the child. We tend to push the child further before realizing that, okay, a child might be able to do only this much and we need to stop at that. So, that also sometimes our own inhibitions, our own projections get in the way. So same points, I think all of it have been mentioned by Ms. Bindya and Ms. Roshali and Ms. Nikita as well, where giving movement breaks, understanding the needs of the child, collaboration, proper one-on-one collaboration with every stakeholder, every team member is equally important. Again, building communication, social skills through PECs, through phonics, social learning in terms of peer, center-based learning through groups, through basically game-based activities, having a peer buddy, even during transitioning. A lot of time having a peer buddy during transition really helps. Though there are a lot of shadow teachers that Indus does have, we also encourage kids to connect with one another and guide each other during transition. So that really, really helps them in terms of adjusting in the school environment. So these were some of the strategies that worked for us. I think pretty much all the points have been covered. One thing that I want to talk about was essential agreement. A lot of times, specifically when we transition back to the physical classroom, kids, it was very difficult for them to settle down in the beginning. So having essential agreement with them in the beginning really helped. That, okay, in a day there are say 6 periods, 3 periods I'm going to do language, math, UI, and then the remaining 3 periods perhaps I might have a break. So prepping them for the plan of the day, activity of the day through PECs, through visual cards, really, really helps our SEN students. Having them involving them in the learning process, as well as prepping them for what is the course of the day, what is the plan of the day, really helps in making them adjust to the school environment. And again, sometimes we have to be flexible in our approach. We can't be so rigid and say that, no, you have to do maths today. If the child is not willing, we have to, modify our approach then and there. So that is something that we had to do. We also used a lot of online tools. Sometimes that again helped in arousing interest and sustaining their interest. So yeah, I mean, these are some student responses which I thought I might share, because they're quite an eye opener. Like, I don't want to be a part of the online mini channels. We try to group them in online tool as well, but we saw, and these are survey responses, so we don't know which child has named this, written this. So a lot of self-doubt, a lot of this, but sometimes having personalized approach really works. Like, this is Miss Vindhya, sometimes just being a child with them. It really, really helps in connecting with them on a personal basis. So I know I took up a lot of your time, but I hope these strategies help, and looking forward to the questions. Over to you, Ms. Meghna.
Hi, yes. Thank you, Ms. Rishti. I think that was very comprehensive and descriptive of you to share through the PPT in terms of what are the challenges that you face to how you sort of work towards it. Just wanted you to also share in terms of how often do you collaborate with shadow teachers, and what kind of role do the shadow teachers play when we also have special educators in school. Most of them often do understand that, okay, if this is already a special educator, why do I have to hire a shadow teacher for my child, right? So most of the parents are concerned with that. So we would like for you to sort of tell us from your side, what are some of the challenges that you would face, and what is the role that of the shadow teacher, that how does having a shadow teacher benefit you in this school?
Okay. Very interesting question. So shadow teacher really helps in integration, specifically in class. In class support, if the child needs anything, like if the child needs movement break, if the child is distracted, if the child needs just a minor tap on the shoulder to help him get back on task. This is something a special educator will not be able to do, because special educator is working with all the children with needs across the school, right? A shadow teacher is one-on-one just for the child. Special educator works with perhaps 20, 30 kids across the school. The shadow is just for the child. So whatever the child needs, she is there or he is there to guide, assist, or support them in any possible manner. So that is where the individualized, proper one-on-one support comes in. And like you said, we collaborate on a daily basis. Like I have been collaborating with Ms. Roshali with a client regarding a client, and she knows a lot of things which I don't know about the child, because of the fact that she's with the child 24/7. And then we have to collaborate, and we have to be on the same page in terms of what works for the child, what doesn't work with the child. So that is where they are helping us in terms of making sure that not just socially, emotionally, but academically also, how to integrate them, right? In class support, outside transitioning support, it really, really enhances the confidence of the child. It's not that the shadow has to be with the child 24/7. They do wean them off as and when required, especially during peer play. They're not required at that time, and they know how to distance. I think a parent question that it might lead to dependence, and it might lead to low self-esteem. But we do have a lot of empathy sensitization workshop with the whole class. A lot of our students are aware about who a shadow teacher is and why is there another teacher sitting next to a student in the class. So a lot of these sensitization workshops help in working towards inclusion. So it's not that it leads to the morale being down, specifically because we don't have just one shadow for one child. We generally have like 2 to 3 shadows in a class. So if there are 3 different shadows along with the class teacher, the other students are not getting overwhelmed by the fact that why is only one child having that. In fact, the shadow a lot of time helps the class teacher in general in terms of accommodating the other students as well. So, but yeah, the personalized approach really, really works. It really helps the child. They're able to assist him emotionally, academically, socially. They're there for transition. They're there for collaboration, for bridging the learning gap. I hope I answered the question. So.
Yes, certainly did. Thank you so much. So coming to Dr. Bindya, since you have worked as an inclusion consultant and have supported schools in inclusion and facilitating inclusion in this classrooms, do you think inclusion can be achieved without a shadow teacher support?
I think it's definitely possible, Meghna. But there's a lot of effort that needs to happen from the school side. In the school that I have consulted for, we had a policy that we will not have a shadow from outside. One of the reasons we've seen also is that when there are shadows being appointed, it's usually they're usually appointed by the families. They're not part of the school payroll, which itself makes them an outsider in a lot of respects. I've seen how shadows in certain cases are looked upon as like the parents' representatives in school. And the schools tend to have this a little bit of a I think there's a bit of an insecurity also, because they're not sure what kind of communication the shadows would be taking back to the parents, and there's a lot of insecurity on the part of the school side also. So we see there is a lot of attempt for the school, the teachers, the staff in the school to include the shadow as part of their, they would be included in a lot of different activities that is organized in the school, but at the same time they would also feel like an outsider. So these are some of the concerns that I have seen with having an external shadow in the school. And in a lot of cases, teachers are also not open um, to the ideas that a shadow might bring. So when a shadow is an external entity, we do see a lot of resistance from the school side in accepting inputs from the shadow. But we've seen with schools like Indus, where there has been this collaboration, and where there's an open environment where they're willing to work with the shadow to make sure that the child is moving forward. Which is not true in a lot of schools that we have worked with before also. The other part of the answer to your question is that when the shadows are not there, the school and the teachers have to take a lot more onus of the child's performance in the school. When a shadow is there, mostly teachers tend to put that responsibility onto the shadow. We also see that a lot of teachers kind of shirk their responsibilities also. So they would say, I have seen teachers, when I have myself been a shadow before, and I have seen teachers who would tell me, oh, I'm going to have this group activity and he might not be able to be a part of this, so why don't you just take him and be on the side, things like that. And that is the opposite of inclusion. We want the child to be part of all the experiences that happen in the classroom, and that's the reason why we are here to support you. And you are excluding the child because there is a person to take care of the child. I mean, that is also the mentality sometimes the teachers show. So in order to avoid these kinds of glitches, we kind of set it up in such a way that everyone takes responsibility. Now, everybody from the principal to the teachers to the support staff in the building, everybody knows about the needs of the child, and everybody takes ownership and everybody works together. Now, that is extremely difficult. It's an extremely difficult job extremely difficult goal to achieve, because to have everybody on board for inclusion is not necessarily practical, because most teachers believe that if I have a child who gives me trouble a lot in the class, if that child is out of the class, I have more time to focus on the other children and just teach them. So I would probably just have that child leave my class. That is how most teachers think. So to help to get these teachers to a point where they start thinking that every child in this class has a right to be there and to the right to access education the same way, and that it's your duty to deliver education to all of them in the same way, is an uphill task for people like us. But we have tried that. We have tried to work around this model. I think I have been part of the school for almost 5 years now. And I know even in the 5th year, I was still struggling with some of the teachers. So a shadow teacher is an easier solution, if you think about it. So the school, the teachers, everybody, even if they are resistant to the whole inclusion model, here's somebody who can support you in implementing it. So that way, the shadow teacher is a more accessible way of inclusion, I would say. It's not that the other way without shadows is not possible, but it is going to be extremely difficult, and schools are not going to choose that. That much I can tell you.
Yeah, that is pretty much the reality of our inclusive schools today. But yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts on the same. So I think we can open it up for questions now. Anybody has any specific question that you would like to address any of the speakers, you may take their name and address it. Otherwise, I think we can just answer if you have any other generic queries. Dr. Binde, if you wanted to just address Mr. Bharat's question if you wanted to add anything more to.
I think Ms. Shrishti did answer that question. If Mr. Bharat has need more clarification on that, I would be happy to provide.
Yeah, ma'am. I think that kind of, but I was convinced that we need a shadow. But whatever you told, it's correct because we'll have a resistance from the school and teachers, and also we definitely need cooperative teachers. But I have one more question related to that. What Sister said, collaboration. It's a very, very good point. I really appreciate that because it's all collaboration between parents, therapists, educators, and shadow teacher. But my main question is like the kid is going for school for 6 hours and he's getting exhausted, overwhelmed, right? Now he may have some of the therapies, right? So how we can manage those things, like how we can identify what right intervention does he needs and how we can, manage those timelines. Like he's going to school for 6 hours, he might have some therapy for 1 hour, maybe going to some sport or something like that, right? How we can effectively manage that so that he's not overwhelmed or distracted. Because I have seen with my son, he likes something for 15 days, again he lost the interest, then again we have to struggle to find out what he likes. So if you can shed some light on that, how we can manage this a roller coaster ride of mood swings or interest, or how to balance between the school and the therapies and the right intervention.
How old is your child, Mr. Bharat?
6.5. Yeah, he just started going to first standard.
Okay, 6.5. All right. Mr. Bharat, have you ever thought if your child were a typically developing child, what would your priorities be?
It's a free play, whatever he likes. Whatever he likes, it's a free, because when I was kid, right, nobody forced me to do this, right? And same goes with him. It's a free play. Like nobody should direct me, nobody should guide me. I let myself play the way I want. The same goes with him as well.
And what about schooling versus other activities, other co-curricular activities? How would you prioritize that?
It depends on, again, interest. If I'm interested in a sport, I'll go for a sport. If I'm interested in indoor activities, maybe it's a music or art, I would prefer that. But again, we'll focus on his interest.
So would you prioritize those interests over school?
Again, it's a very difficult question to answer because we are in a society where everybody gives a focus on education, right? Learning is very important. Like we have been taught like that, you have to do the schooling, you have to do this marking and all. So we are not yet developed to that level, focus on the what kid interest is. So again, yes, focus is academic, most of the parent does. So I does also same thing. But again, after seeing him, after going through this phase, right, my focus is let him do whatever he likes most, so that he'll be a better person and he'll become independent. So motto is let him be independent, let him be awareness to social things, and let him know that I am part of society and society also should know that he is part of society. So main area is, yes, let him do whatever he likes most.
So you've actually answered your question to the most part, but one thing that I would add to that is, when we think of school, we are only thinking of education. And to me, school is not, I would like to say not just for education, but I want to say not at all for education, given the educational system we have. But the reason why I focus on schooling is for the socialization, right? Yeah. He's supposed to be in school because every child of his age are in school. And that is where he should be. That is where he has all the right to be, and he should be, right? So school is definitely first priority for the socialization bit. All right. And the reason why you do everything else after school is also for a reason, right? You can pursue your interests after school. Now, if you were to ask me, would I prioritize school over therapies? I would say yes. School would definitely give him more advantage than therapies do. The reason why I'm saying that is therapies can only help you to a certain extent, because therapies will teach you the skills that you are supposed to achieve at a certain age. But then if the child is not ready for the skill at that stage, the child is probably not going to show you any progress. But on the other hand, when he is with a group of children and socializing with them, watching them do other things, he's more likely to learn and probably even do things there. So for that reason, I would always prioritize school over the other therapies that you have. So to answer your question, now I would need a lot more information about your child to answer this question. But in general terms, I would say he should be going to school for as many hours as he can. If it's 6 hours of school, he should access that 6 hours of school. And then after that, you can use your weekends or, the additional time, the extra time that he has for the other activities or therapies that you would like for him to access. So that is how I would look at it. I would like to hear from the other panelists also if they have any thoughts to add or different way of thinking about it.
Ms. Srishti, Ms. Rushali, Ms. Nikita, anything you would like to add?
Can I just add to Bindya ma'am's point? Like Bindya ma'am was saying that, you should look at school as majorly from a socialization point, because what happens as a shadow teacher, what I've noticed and what is expected out of me is also that the education part of it is really not coming from the school. Most of my clients' education is covered up. The bridging is done by me separately apart from the classroom. So classroom is only there for him to socialize. Most of his activities in the classroom is directed towards socialization. Very little academics is actually happening inside the classroom. Whatever academics is happening within the school is also not happening in the classroom. It's happening separately with me in the library or in some quiet place. Other times my client is just, it's just he's settling down in the classroom. So academics is really not part of it. The bridging is happening outside the classroom or with the parents. So the schooling, like academics, is really not it's not that big of a focus, especially for neurodiverse kids, is what I would say.
I wanted to make a point. I think social learning plays a major role, be it in terms of social skills or academic. We have had students where they've not done anything in class, but looking at the peer group, they've been a part of the activity or they've picked up things. I think social learning definitely plays a huge role in terms of integrating, arousing interest, including them, and shouldn't much it.
All right. Anyone else from the audience who have any other questions you may want to ask? Hello? Yes, please go ahead.
Hello, ma'am. I am calling from Bhubaneswar. And my child is diagnosed with autism. He is 11 years old now. He is going to inclusive setup. In our school, body parents is allowed. You can go with shadow body parents. As a body parents, I am going with my kid. So is it okay? Yeah, or I will give a shadow for him.
How many years have you been going like that, Ms. Sonali?
Ma'am, I am going from class 1 with him.
And how has it worked out for you?
He's cooperating with me very much. But now in our school's special educator, she told that he is elder now. It will be better to come with a shadow. So is it fair or?
So usually we don't encourage parents being shadows. Just so that children understand the difference between school and home, because otherwise it's just the same, the same person at home and same person at school, and the expectations would be different. So it's a little confusing for the children. So we don't usually encourage that. But we do know of schools that allow it, and we do know of parents who have done it also, just like you, and it has worked out for you also. It has worked out for some parents. Now, usually around 11 or 12 years of age, we do discourage having a shadow, even if it is an external person. That is around the age when we decide we will not give a shadow anymore, because children are entering the preteen years, and there's a lot of social stigma in the class. As it is, as teenagers, there are a lot of issues that they need to deal with in
Yes,
social circles.
yes,
So to have somebody who is like a personal, it's like having your personal nanny or somebody coming with you to school, right? And it's again all the more stigmatizing for children. So we do discourage that. So around 12 years of age, we help the families to reevaluate the situation to see, is this inclusive setup a good setup, an appropriate setup for your child in the long run or going forward, or should we look at other settings? Should we look at alternate schools or even special schools for that matter? Because now we need to focus on academics, because after 13 years of age we need to think about how can we get him to probably attempt the
actually, ma'am, he's not academically independent. That's why I'm going. He's not. He's very calm. He has very good sitting habits. He's following all the instructions, but he has no cooperating with academics is zero.
how much can he do? Can he read? Can
Yes,
he
yes,
do,
ma'am.
okay, can he
He
do
can
maths
read,
and all
but
that?
he has eye problem. He has -12, -10 eyesight. This is the main problem for him. He can't concentrate on blackboard or
Okay.
whiteboard.
So he
That's why I'm
needs
going.
support. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think it will have to be between you and the school, because if they think that, there should be an external person, then I think it might be a good idea for you to explore that, because it seems like he needs that support, especially to access what is written on the board and everything. But maybe in another couple more years, you should reevaluate to see what else can we do for him. Should he just
Okay,
continue to be there? What is he gaining out of just being there? Which class
okay,
is he attending right now?
ma'am. He is now in class 6.
Classics. Okay. So you might want to reconsider in another 1 or 2 years what you want to do. Okay.
Now,
Because
ma'am, he is a little bit irritated that he's not able to read the proper syllabus. That's
right.
why his behavior is quite bad
Mhm.
now. He's
Mhm.
pinching me sometimes.
Mhm.
So how can I overcome this?
We'd be glad to support you, because we might not be able to answer all these questions right now, but you can
Okay, ma'am.
always reach out to us and we can help you separately. We
Okay,
can,
ma'am.
as I said, we can even think about, should we consider other options right now for him, and should he
Okay,
just start working towards that instead of going to school right now? So
okay,
these are things we can answer together if we sit and talk. Okay,
okay,
Sanjay?
ma'am. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me? Yeah. So
Yeah,
basically,
please.
how different is that, handling a non-verbal kid, shadow teachers? So, any of you have experience with handling a non-verbal kid? How do you generally try to communicate with, how, because you guys are the kind of interface between the teacher and the class environment, right? So, could you please help me to understand that how difficult or how do you try to help him or her?
Uh, with a non-verbal child, so we try to communicate with visual cards where he can, or with a communication board where he has access to the board, and he can just point out to things, what he needs or what he wants to do. There will be like pictures or um, which he can tap at, or we will show pictures which will be used as a communication between the shadow teacher and
So you always carry a set of visual cards with you, right? Is it?
yes.
Okay. So the shadow teachers are expected to help in all the areas of school activities that includes academics, right? sitting at desk and also all physical
Yes,
activities. Is that right?
yes, you're right.
So one, maybe it looks odd to ask this question. What is not expected from shadow teacher? I mean, parents, what shouldn't be expecting from shadow teacher?
Um, I don't know
Can
what
I
to
answer
say,
that
but
question?
yeah.
Hi, this is Aparna. I'm also a shadow teacher at Indus. And that's a good question actually, because sometimes we don't get to answer or talk about that aspect of it. But honestly, what instead of saying what you shouldn't expect from the shadow teacher, from a shadow teacher's perspective, I like to say that be involved in your kid's life. Sometimes what happens is, I'm sure it's really stressful and challenging to work with children at home also, and the presence of a shadow teacher kind of makes it a little easier for the parents. But sometimes what I've noticed is they become fully dependent on the shadow teacher themselves, so they'll just think, okay, she's there, and I don't have to do anything now, and those 8 hours 6 hours in school, she, as long as she's there, it's fine. And sometimes I see parents missing out on a lot of good things that happen in the child's lives just because they're not around, or they're not um, involving themselves in those aspects of the child's lives. So that is a thing that I like to say, that it's great that you have found assistance through a shadow teacher, but even then, like the collaboration point which is mentioned, become actively involved to see what is the child, how is the child experiencing school, what is the child's perspective. Don't just leave it on the shadow teacher to say that, okay, she's bridging the gap, so they're doing fine. I'm sure they must be doing fine, but also if you are present and you are involved in how the child is experiencing school, I think it makes a bit of a difference. That's what I wanted to say from what I've observed.
Thank you so much. That was really nice information. I, I really appreciate on that. So one question, I think, right? How quickly a parents are supposed to sync up with? Is it a daily basis to sync up with the shadow teacher, or what is it?
Sorry, it was not clear. Repeat.
So, is it a day-to-day activities? Is it daily sync up with a shadow teacher, or it's usually what is the practice? I think what is most of you guys do. Do you sync up with parents every day? Usually,
Uh,
what happens
are
in the
you
school?
asking if
Or
they update the parents every day? Is that what you're
Update, right?
yeah. I mean, I think I prefer to have a kind of a day-to-day and kind of a bit 5 to 10 minutes of 10 to 15 minutes of call with the shadow teacher. Usually, what is that actually? That is what is actually or how is it? How does it go? I'm asking you because actually I've not had a shadow teacher.
Yeah. So, if you ask me, what I do is I give a daily update as to what the child has done in school and what the child has learned, what any new concept that is used to the child in academics, how the child has done that particular concept with with the help of the shadow teacher. I update all those things to the parents. And also, if there's any concern that the child is facing, also that is also being updated to the parents.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Rushil.
so like Rishali mentioned, it sometimes depends on individual shadow teachers. Like I send audios to my client at the end of the day because we were avoiding talking in front of the child about the child. That is one thing we discourage in Insight, because the child should not, none, especially the negative feedback should not be given in front of the child. And because throughout the day there are many maybe small negative things that have happened, so I send an entire audio, and we use Creo app in Insight. So we communicate through Insight whatever updates are needed. And if there is something, if emergency or something, then obviously we are always available on call or WhatsApp. But most of our communication happens through the Creo app.
Thank you, Nikita.
I think, yeah, go ahead, Dr. Binda.
I
have
wanted
a
to
question.
respond to the first part of the question that you asked, sir. I didn't catch your name. How to support a non-verbal child. So, is it fair to assume that your child is not speaking to communicate right now?
Need basis communication.
Okay. And is there any other form of communication that you have provided to the child other than speaking?
He can write and express.
Okay, so we usually look at what is the form of communication that the child prefers. Because we know when we call it nonverbal, we know that speaking is not the preferred form of communication for the child. That's all that it means. So we look at what is the preferred form of communication. Some children are able to communicate through visuals. Some children use an AAC device. Some children write and communicate. So if that is the case, we encourage that, and we encourage our shadows to encourage that as well, because we want our children to be expressive. They need to express themselves to the environment, whoever's there in the environment that they are in. So that is what we would work on, we would bank on, especially for the shadow to understand the child better, and also for the shadow to help the teachers understand the child better. So if our child already has a system of communication, that is the best. And then as a shadow, we would pick up on that and support the child with that.
Hi, ma'am. I have a question. Uh, how to prepare a child for the school? They said it's like a visual class. Is there any other strategies? And how the other question is that how do you handle a situation when a child is pulling or pushing? And what do you tell or what strategy do you use to overcome the child? Thank you.
Can I go forward? So for preparing the child for school, that will not start until the child starts going to the school. First of all, it's very different when you prepare the child at home. No matter you might try very hard, even as a shadow. Maybe we have used social stories or videos or other things to prepare the child. But the actual thing is very different from what it is in school. So it has to happen spontaneously in school only. And the other part of the question, like how to handle pushing, pulling, all of those are very separate behaviors, and all the children, they they react very differently. So all this, like the strategies I might have used with my client in December is not working right now also. So it's not even like with the same client the same strategy will work. So we have to constantly update ourselves, because the kids are also becoming very smarter, so we have to become smarter with them. We do use things like social stories, and like as a shadow teacher, I have identified places which calms down my client within the school, because there are no sensory spaces separately designed in the school. So there are certain activities which calms down my client, like pushing a chair, like some certain kinds of movement activities calms him down, running up and down. So certain kinds of those things we'll have to figure out, and find unique ways to deal with such challenges.
Thank you, ma'am.
To add to what Nikita said, it is about, we need to first understand why the child is doing that behavior. Is it, some children go and push somebody because they don't know how to go and ask them to play with them. And this is their way of asking them, right? So if it is a social reason why the child is going and pushing or pulling someone, then then, as Nikita said, we probably would be using social stories or other strategies to teach the child more appropriate ways of inviting someone to play. Some children may push or pull for sensory reasons. And then again, as Nikita said, we would be using sensory strategies. So every time a behavior happens, we might not have a one size fits all answer for that, because we need to understand why this behavior is happening, or why this child is engaging in that particular behavior. And that we would only know either if we have observed the child in that situation, or we talk to you and understand more about the behavior. Only then can we even think about solving that problem that we have.
Okay, ma'am. It's a sort of a play and doesn't understand that we're not supposed to push a child, then what is a better way of understanding? Is that social stories or anything beyond that? Like,
How old is your child?
in general, My child is 5 years old. Actually, social stories, I was given this way, like if you tell him social stories, this type of behavior calms down. Like,
So when
that's
we
what I'm
say
asking you.
social stories, it's very different from your regular stories. That is something we need to understand. And social stories are have their own structure. You need to understand how to make one. If so, to qualify as a social story, there are certain steps that it should follow and stuff like that. So that is again something that we customize for each child, right? Now, if you need support in dealing with a problem, a behavior like that, we can always help you with that, separately. We might not be able to do it here because we will need
Yeah,
more
I understand.
information than that.
Yeah.
But if you can tell us, give us more information, and then we can sit and talk and figure out what's going on. What are the stressors in the environment when that is happening? All that, if we figure out, then we can probably come up with a solution for that.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thanks for
I think we can take one last question and then we can wrap up. I just wanted to add to one of the questions that they asked about the shadow teacher, what not to expect. I think a lot of parents also expect the shadow teachers to accompany the child to the bathroom and feed the kid during lunch break. So that's something that I think we just wanted to point out that shadow teachers do not do because they're not the same as caretakers or nannies. So I just wanted to bring that up here. Thank you. Is there anybody, one last question that we can take?
Yeah, I have one question. Sorry, last question. So now we are in a shadow teacher setup, right? Now shadow teacher is having some sort of strategies in school setup. Now we are at home, the kid is at home, right? Parents may not be doing the same strategies for the same year. So how this gap bridges between shadow and the parents? Like for example, my question is maybe shadow is using some strategy if he's not sitting at a place in a classroom, and at home maybe he's not doing his homework, parents are reinforcing something else, so that will create a conflict of strategies, right? So how we bridge this gap between shadow strategies and a parent strategies, or does shadow educate parents about the strategies what they have used in school and encourage parents also to follow the same at home, or how is it happens?
Mr.
Yes, we
Bharat,
do tell.
go ahead,
Sorry.
Roshani.
Uh, yeah, we do tell the parents what sort of strategies we use in school. Like we see if that is um, something which we have already done as well when we used to go home during the online setup. So we see if that is working in school, and we, uh, you know, tell the parents about that. Or if we are uh, using any other strategies in school that the child is able to concentrate or sit in a place and do the work, that also we tell the parents. So if we see if that is um, able the strategy is able to be I mean if the parents can do it at home, we see that. And if not, we try to give them other strategies which, like, give them suggestions as to how they can help the child at home as well. Ma'am, you can.
I think, Mr. Bharat, this is the easiest bridge because you have direct access to the shadows. And for you to understand the strategies that the shadows are doing, you just have to contact them and ask them. It's not as difficult as talking to a teacher in the school, for example. So that way, this is the easiest bridge that can happen, and they would be easily be available to help you with the strategies that are happening in school. But the other side to that question is that, as I told you initially, the triggers would be very different. The reason why your child is not sitting in the seat in classroom is very different from the reason why the child is not sitting
Correct.
in seat at home. So the strategies will also have to differ. So the bottom line is that it doesn't really matter if the strategies are consistent. If it is working out for your setting, just use it.
Got it.
And if it is working out in the school for the shadow can continue to use that, right? And even if they are different, it doesn't matter. So it's all about if it works for you.
Correct. It's what triggers happen. Yeah.
Correct.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah.
And also in Insight, like at the before the end of the month, we do behavioral observation reports, we do lesson plans. So in like we set our objectives also, smart goals also. So all of that is discussed before we implement it. The next month we discuss it with the parents. So maybe like certain times when we want the parent to, or the parent we want to check with them whether this strategy will work or not, and we do that during the monthly meetings, and that is where we make sure that we and the parents are at the same page. So that is also somewhere we check that is going on.
Yep. Thank you. Oh, sorry, one final question. I think System M showed some online tools, right? Can that be shared across, or how is it? Means it's a plain question. So yeah. In her presentation, she showed some online tools, right? They are using in the school, or not sure. So can that be shared with everybody, or
Yes,
how?
sir. Yeah,
Okay.
I've shared the slides. I think they can be shared with the.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Um, can everybody hear me? Yeah, okay. So yeah, I think we can wrap up. But before that, we just wanted to share something. So one of our shadow teachers was working with one of the kids for about 2 years, and the child was actually very interested to come and share his experiences. But I think they had to step out and they had to go out. But he did share a video, and we did ask him for his consent if we could share it with everybody in the webinar, and he was very happy to do so. And his parents also have permitted for the same thing. So I would like Kavita from our Insight team to share the video with us. And they're also open for it to being recorded. So we can continue the recording. Kavita, could you go ahead and please share the video with us? And before that, if you could probably just tell us a little bit about what you were working with online and what you were working with offline.
Okay, I think she was asking me to share about my experience working with Anmay. When I started with my the child, he wasn't really interested in studies. I mean, more often, I mean, especially in math, and and other things also. Even in social areas, he wasn't you know wasn't communicating much with other kids, and playing games with other kids wasn't. I mean, he wasn't really ready for it, and so where I actually started with online classes. I was supporting him in online class, and I was helping him in doing his academic and teaching him all the subjects. And after that, after the COVID, we shifted to school, and it was I cannot imagine that there was tremendous improvement in him. I think that online, when I was teaching him, I mean, supporting him in online class, that actually helped him a lot to, be independent in school when he was moved to, the offline school. So yeah, he really, I'm very happy that I worked with him, and I showed many improvements in academic as well as, in other areas. So yeah, I'll show you the video. I think the recording is paused, right? Chitra?